He thought she came for money, but the way she looked at him said otherwise. She wasn't a beggar or a thief, or another lost soul drifting through the desert. She was here for something owed, something buried deeper than any pocket of gold. When she placed a silver token on his table, every man in the saloon went silent. It wasn't payment, it was a summons, and before the night was over, he'd learn the real price she'd come to collect. The saloon doors creaked open to the sound of wind and dust. Lantern light caught the edge of her shadow first, long, unhurried, carved in gold and smoke. Men stopped talking. The piano stuttered to a halt. Only the soft hiss of whiskey being poured broke the silence. She walked in slow, scanning faces that didn't welcome strangers. Her clothes were torn from travel, her boots coated in desert ash, but her gaze never wavered. She moved like someone who already knew what she'd find. At the back of the room sat the cowboy, hat low, one hand near his drink, the other near the iron at his hip. When she reached his table, she didn't ask permission. She sat. He didn't look up. "You're a long way from your people." "I was," she said. Her voice was calm, quiet enough to make every man lean closer. He finally glanced up and froze. Her eyes weren't asking. They were judging. In her palm rested a silver coin, worn smooth by time. "That's supposed to mean something?" he asked. "It's what your brother owed," she said. "Before he died." The words hit like a shot in the dark. His chair creaked as he leaned forward. "You knew him." "I buried him." A murmur rippled through the room. Someone at the bar laughed nervously, then went silent when she turned her head. The cowboy's jaw tightened. "If this is about money—" "It's not," she cut in. "I'm here to collect what he promised." He studied her face, looking for a trick. There wasn't one, just the steady patience of someone who'd crossed miles of empty land for a reason no one else could carry. The wind outside shifted, pushing against the door. It groaned like a warning. She stood. "You'll ride with me at dawn." He frowned. "And if I don't?" Her gaze flicked toward the silver coin. "Then the desert will come find you itself." When she left, no one breathed until the doors swung shut. The cowboy looked down at the coin, light glinting off its edge. He'd seen that mark once before, on a grave he'd never visited. And for the first time in years, the whiskey in his glass tasted like guilt. Dawn broke thin and gray over the desert. The town still slept beneath a haze of dust, but the cowboy was already saddled up, hat pulled low, jaw set hard. He'd spent half the night staring at that coin, turning it over in his palm until the engraving felt burned into his skin. Now he followed the trail east, the same way she'd gone, her tracks clean, deliberate, like someone who didn't fear being followed. He found her by the old well just beyond the cottonwoods. She'd built a small fire, her horse grazing nearby. When he rode up, she didn't look up right away. She was boiling coffee in a tin pot, hands steady as if she'd been expecting him all along. "You came," she said. He swung down from the saddle. "Didn't say I wouldn't." "You didn't say you would either." He gave a faint smirk. "Didn't think I had a choice." She poured him coffee without asking. The smell hit him first. Strong, bitter, clean. He hesitated before taking it. "Your brother used to drink it the same way," she said. "Burned." "No sugar." He froze halfway through his first sip. "You talk like you knew him better than I did." "I knew what kind of man he was when nobody watched." The wind picked up, rustling the dry grass. A hawk circled above, tracing slow arcs against the morning sky. The cowboy sat, boots creaking as he leaned forward. "You said he owed you." "What for?" She stared into the fire. "A promise he made before your name ever meant anything. He swore he'd bring back something that belonged to my people, something taken from our ground," he frowned. "Stolen property?" Her eyes lifted to meet his. A relic, sacred, the kind men die for without knowing why. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "And you think I can find it?" She studied him a moment. "He said you were the only one who could." He barked a short laugh. "Then he didn't know me half as well as you think." Her tone stayed even. "He knew your guilt would bring you back. That shut him up." The silence stretched. Only the fire cracked and the wind whispered across the sand. Finally, he said, "If I help you, what happens after?" Then you'll know what kind of man you are." He gave a small shake of his head. "Lady, I already know." "Then prove it," she said. He opened his mouth to answer, but before he could, the sound of hooves echoed in the distance. Both froze. She was on her feet first, scanning the ridge. "They followed you." "Who?" "Men who serve the one that stole from us." He cursed under his breath. "You should have told me this wasn't just about some damn coin." "It never was." 3 riders appeared over the ridge, rifles glinting in the sun. The cowboy reached for his gun, but she stopped him with a hand on his arm. "Not yet," she said. Her touch was light, careful, almost protective. The act of care before threat. She turned, walking straight into the open. The wind caught her hair, dark against the morning light. She lifted one hand, palm raised. The riders slowed, confused by her calm. The cowboy watched, tense, hand still hovering near his pistol. She called out, voice sharp as a whip. "Tell your master the debt will be paid in blood or in honor. He chooses." The lead rider raised his rifle. "Lady Gat, you talk too proud for someone alone." The cowboy stepped forward then, voice like gravel. "She ain't alone." The man's aim faltered. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "I know you," he said. "You rode with the Brandt brothers once. You're supposed to be dead." The cowboy cocked his revolver. "Suppose again." The standoff hung there, heavy as the air before a storm. Then the Apache woman spoke softly, almost to herself. "The wind decides." A gust tore across the ridge, blinding them with dust. When it cleared, the riders were retreating, spooked, shouting, disappearing back over the hill. The cowboy lowered his gun, chest heaving. "You planned that." She gave the faintest smile. "The desert listens when you speak to it right." He stared at her, half in disbelief. "You're full of trouble." Her gaze was steady. "Trouble's where truth lives." He holstered his weapon and looked east, where the horizon shimmered like a mirage. "Where to next?" "Home," she said. "The place your brother never reached." He swallowed hard, the words heavier than any bullet. "Then we ride." She nodded once, mounting her horse. And as the 2 figures rode out across the open plain, the fire behind them died slow, leaving only a wisp of smoke twisting toward the sky, a promise already in motion. By midday, the sun had turned the desert white. Heat shimmered off the ground, bending the horizon into waves of liquid gold. The cowboy and the Apache woman rode side by side in silence, their shadows long and thin against the dust. They hadn't spoken since the ridge. The quiet between them wasn't anger, it was weight, the kind that sits in a man's chest when he starts to realize what he's part of. At last, she broke it. "He used to talk about you," she said softly. The cowboy didn't look at her. "Most folks remember the dead better than the living." "He said you were the better shot." He gave a humorless grin. "Then he was a liar." They rode a little farther. The wind carried the scent of dry mesquite and smoke. A vulture circled above, tracing wide, patient loops. "You were there," she said finally. "The night they took it." He tensed. "I was there, yes. Then you watched him die." He pulled his reins sharply, the horse snorting beneath him. "I didn't watch. I turned away." Her gaze didn't waver. "Same thing." The words hit harder than he expected. He took a breath, staring out toward the flat stretch ahead. "We were hired to move freight. Guns, whiskey, whatever paid. Thought it was just another haul. But it wasn't." He shook his head slowly. "It was a raid. We were stealing from your village. Your people." She didn't answer, just looked ahead, the muscles in her jaw tightening. "I didn't know," he said. "Not till it was too late. By the time I figured it out, your brother—" He stopped himself. "Say it," she whispered. He exhaled. "By the time I figured it out, your brother was bleeding out beside me. He gave me the coin, said, 'Take it home.' But I didn't." She said nothing. The silence hurt worse than shouting. They rode until the land dipped into a shallow canyon. The walls rose around them, red stone scarred by centuries of wind. Down below, an old mission stood half-collapsed, its bell tower cracked, its door hanging by one hinge. "This was where it began," she said, "and maybe where it ends." He dismounted, boots crunching on the dry earth. "You think what you're looking for's still here." She walked ahead, eyes tracing the stone carvings, faded by time. Some things don't disappear, they just wait. Inside, the air was cool and heavy with dust. Shafts of light broke through holes in the roof, catching motes that danced like ash. The cowboy trailed her, his fingers brushing the wall as he walked. "Your people built this." "No," she said quietly. "Yours did. Ours buried it." At the altar lay a small wooden box, half rotted, half buried under debris. She knelt, brushing away the sand. Inside was a bundle wrapped in animal hide, bound by a leather cord. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The cowboy crouched beside her. "What is it?" She lifted it carefully, an amulet made of turquoise and bone, carved in the shape of a hawk. The light caught on it, making it glow like fire trapped in stone. "This is what they took," she said. "The heart of the mountain, the sign of protection." He stared. "That's what your brother died for." She nodded. "He said without it, the land would forget us." He swallowed hard. "Then I guess this is me paying my debt." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Debt can't bring back the dead." "No," he said, "but maybe it can stop the killing." Outside, a distant sound broke the stillness, a gunshot, then another. The woman stiffened. "They followed us." He moved fast, pulling her behind a pillar. "How many?" "More than before." He peered through the doorway. Figures moved between the rocks, 6 and maybe 7. One carried a torch. "They're not just tracking us," he said. "They're here to bury the truth." She clutched the amulet to her chest. "Then we don't let them." He checked his revolver, spinning the chamber. "You ever shoot before?" She met his gaze, calm as ever. "Only when it mattered." "Then today counts." The first bullet hit the stone near his head. Chips of rock stung his cheek. He fired back, the echo rolling through the canyon like thunder. The attackers fanned out, firing from both sides. Dust filled the air, turning the sun into a smear of gold and blood. He shouted, "Get to the back!" She ran toward the collapsed wall, clutching the amulet. He followed, firing blind over his shoulder. When they reached the narrow gap leading out to the cliffs, she stopped. "You'll never make it carrying both." "Then take it," he said, shoving the amulet into her hands. "Run." She shook her head. "Not without you." "Lady," he said, cocking the hammer again, "this is the part where you live." He turned back toward the entrance, firing as the riders charged closer. The sound was deafening, desperate, defiant. And when the dust finally cleared, only the echo of gunfire remained, rolling over the canyon like the desert itself was remembering every shot. The canyon held its breath. Smoke drifted low through the ruins, curling around stone and shadow. Somewhere in that haze, the cowboy's last gunshot still echoed, bouncing off the cliffs like a ghost refusing to die. The Apache woman crouched behind a fallen beam, clutching the amulet so tightly her knuckles whitened. Dust filled her lungs, burning her throat. She wanted to run, but her body refused to move. Then came the voice, rough, familiar. "Go!" Through the smoke, she saw him, half hidden behind a shattered pillar, revolver still hot, bleeding from his side. His hat was gone, his shirt torn, but his eyes were alive. "Ride!" he shouted. She hesitated. "Not without you." He fired again, jaw tight with pain. "Don't waste it!" 2 riders stormed through the doorway, guns drawn. She ducked, rolling behind a broken altar as bullets tore through the air. One struck the wall inches from her head. The sound rang like a bell. The cowboy hit one of them square in the chest. The second took cover behind a column, reloading fast. He turned toward her, voice hoarse. "There's a path behind the cliff. Follow the riverbed. It'll take you north." Her breath shook. "So you'll die here." He grinned weakly. "Then I'll die square." That grin, half defiance, half apology, told her everything he couldn't say. Another bullet shattered the air. The cowboy winced, dropping to one knee. Blood seeped through his fingers. The Apache woman pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding. The amulet in her hand pulsed warm, as if alive. She whispered, "Not again." And before she could stop herself, she ran back toward him. He saw her too late, Damn it. She grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the back exit. You said to ride north, so move. He stumbled once, teeth gritted. You're insane. Then we're both still breathing. They reached the rear wall. She kicked aside loose rocks, revealing a narrow gap between the stones. Light poured through, a sliver of sky, a way out. He looked back once. They'll follow. Let them, she said. The land will judge. They crawled through the gap, emerging onto a ledge overlooking the riverbed far below. The wind was fierce now, whipping her hair across her face. Behind them, boots pounded closer. He turned, raised his gun again, one bullet left. She caught his wrist. No, they want you to fire. They're counting shots. He met her eyes. So what do you suggest? Let the desert answer. She lifted the amulet high, the turquoise glinting in the sun. A gust howled through the canyon, sudden and wild. Sand rose in spirals, stinging eyes, blinding sight. Horses screamed, men shouted, disoriented. The cowboy stared, half in awe. What the hell? Wind remembers, she said. He blinked through the storm. You did that? She didn't answer, just pressed the amulet into his palm. It remembers him and you. He didn't understand. Not yet. A bullet whined past his ear, chipping stone. He turned, aiming toward the noise, but she shoved him aside. The shot meant for his heart caught her instead. Her breath hitched, eyes wide. He caught her as she fell, the amulet slipping between them. No, 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 stay with me. She smiled faintly. The land keeps its word. He pressed his hand over the wound. You can't. Don't. Her fingers brushed his cheek. Take it home. Then her body went still. The storm outside began to die, the wind softening to a whisper. He sat there, shaking, dust settling over them both. The amulet glowed dimly between his fingers, fading like breath leaving the earth. When he finally stood, he carried her to the riverbed and laid her down where the water once ran. The ground was cracked, but soft enough for the task. He dug with his hands, wordless, slow. When he finished, he placed the amulet on her chest, bowing his head. I'll take it home, he said quietly. Even if I have to walk through hell to do it. He covered her with earth, one handful at a time. The wind rose once more, not fierce, not angry, gentle, almost grateful. He looked up at the canyon rim. The last of the riders had vanished, swallowed by the storm they'd started. The sun broke through the clouds then, painting the sand gold. He whispered to the air, You win, brother. You win. Then he mounted his horse and turned north and rode into the wind, blood on his shirt, promise in his hands. Behind him, the canyon fell silent. The desert, for once, seemed at peace. And somewhere in that stillness, a hawk's cry echoed, high, clear, and free. The northern trail was merciless, stone, wind, and silence stretching for days. The cowboy rode through it alone, carrying two things that grew heavier with every mile. The amulet tied to his belt, and the memory of the woman who died to return it. He hadn't buried her name. He spoke it in his mind every dawn, a prayer, a curse, and a promise. The land around him felt different now, not just empty, aware. By the fourth sunrise, the canyon gave way to a plateau of red earth and low clouds. A cluster of lodges stood at the base of a ridge. Smoke drifted from the fires there, and voices carried faintly on the wind, chanting steady and low. He slowed his horse. This is it, he murmured. You're home. When he rode into the settlement, people stopped what they were doing. Children paused mid-play. Women looked up from their work. The air filled with the same quiet tension he'd felt that night in the saloon, when strangers recognized trouble walking toward them. An elder stepped forward, tall as grey hair braided down his back, eyes deep as river stone. He said nothing, just waited. The cowboy dismounted, removed his hat. I've come to return something. The elder's gaze dropped to the amulet hanging from the cowboy's belt. His expression didn't change, but the murmurs in the crowd deepened. You carry a spirit that's not yours, the elder said. I know. Then why bring it here? The cowboy took a breath. Because she asked me to. Because she died for it. That got their attention. The elder's eyes narrowed. Who? She didn't tell me her name, he said quietly, but she carried this. said it was promised to be brought home. The elder stepped closer, reaching out with both hands. The cowboy untied the amulet and placed it in his palms. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the elder turned, lifting it high toward the firelight. The turquoise caught the glow, scattering it across the faces of the people gathered there. A soft murmur rippled through them, grief, recognition, awe. "She was my daughter," the elder said. The words hit like a hammer. The cowboy blinked, his throat dry. Your daughter?" The elder nodded slowly. "She followed the path her brother began." Neither returned. He looked down, shame cutting deep. "I tried to keep her alive." The old man studied him. "Did you?" The cowboy hesitated. "No, but I tried to give her peace." The elder's voice softened, though his eyes stayed sharp. "Then your peace will come with the same price." Two younger men stepped forward, taking the cowboy by the arms. He didn't resist. "If you're going to hang me," he said, "do it quick." "No," the elder said. "We don't hang men for debts of the spirit. We make them earn forgiveness." He gestured to the ridge beyond the lodges. "There's a cave in that mountain. It was our sanctuary before your kind came. You will take the amulet there, leave it in the heart of the rock, and speak her name to the earth. Only then will her soul rest, and yours may begin to heal." The cowboy met his gaze. "And if I don't?" The elder's answer was simple. "Then the land will remember you differently." They released him. The elder turned away, leaving him in the quiet circle of watching eyes. As he walked back to his horse, and the crowd parted, but no one spoke. Only one small boy tugged at his sleeve and whispered, "She saved us, didn't she?" He nodded once. "She saved everyone who still listens." The boy smiled faintly, then ran back to his mother. By nightfall, he reached the foot of the mountain. The wind had picked up, carrying the scent of rain and pine. The trail ahead was steep and narrow, winding through jagged stone. He tied his horse and began the climb, boots scraping rock, hands raw from gripping cold stone. At the top, the entrance yawned before him, dark, quiet, eternal. He stepped inside. The air was cool, the walls shimmering faintly with minerals that caught the faint moonlight filtering through the cracks. He knelt, placed the amulet on a flat stone, and whispered, "She brought me farther than I deserved." The sound of his voice vanished into the cave, swallowed by ancient silence. Then, for the first time in years, he prayed, not for mercy, not for himself, but for her. Outside, thunder rumbled over the plains. A single drop of rain fell through the cave's mouth, striking the amulet with a soft metallic ring. He looked up, eyes wide, whispering, "You hear that? The sky's crying for you." When he left the cave, the first storm in months swept across the desert. The land that had once forgotten began to breathe again, and the cowboy, drenched, exhausted but unbroken, rode down the ridge toward whatever redemption might be waiting. The rain had thinned to a mist by the time he reached the valley floor. The earth, long starved, drank greedily. Tiny streams snaked down from the cliffs, cutting new paths through soil that hadn't moved in years. The smell of wet sage filled the air, a living scent, like forgiveness made visible. The cowboy rode slow, letting his horse pick its way through the mud. Every hoofprint sank deep, each one swallowed almost as soon as it formed. Behind him, thunder muttered like a tired god. Ahead, the land glimmered faintly, reborn. He should have felt peace. Instead, a weight sat in his chest heavier than before. He stopped when he reached the wide plain. The river, dry for seasons, now ran thin and trembling, silver against the red dirt. He dismounted, kneeling to touch the water, cold, real. "She did this," he murmured. "She brought the sky back." The wind moved through the grass like a sigh. He cupped the water in his hands and splashed it over his face. It tasted of iron and ash, but it steadied him. His reflection stared back, older, marked, but alive. A rustle broke the stillness. He turned sharply, hand going to his gun. From behind a boulder stepped a figure, small, wrapped in a damp blanket. The boy from the village. "You followed me," the cowboy said. The boy nodded, teeth chattering. "Elder said you'd need a guide." He frowned. "The elder's wrong. Go back." "I can't," The river's rising, the path's gone. The cowboy swore under his breath. Then you're stuck with me. The boy's eyes dropped to the revolver at his side. You killed bad men. He hesitated. Sometimes. Doesn't make me good. The boy studied him. She thought you were. That silenced him. He looked toward the ridge where the storm still flickered in the distance. We'd better find higher ground before it floods. They walked beside the horse, the boy quiet except for the occasional cough. After a while, he asked, "Will the land forgive us now?" The cowboy didn't answer right away. "The land don't hold grudges," he said finally. "People do." They climbed a low rise scattered with black rock. The wind had turned colder. In the distance, lightning flashed again, outlining the horizon in silver. The boy pointed. "Smoke." The cowboy narrowed his eyes. A thin column rose near the old railway tracks. Wrong place, wrong color. Not a village fire. Campfire. He felt his stomach knot. "Stay here," he said. He handed the boy his canteen, then crept forward through the wet grass. Every step squelched. He moved slow, breathing with the rhythm of the rain. The camp sat in a shallow basin. 2 tents, 3 horses, and a pair of men hunched near a fire trying to dry their coats. He recognized one by the scar along his jaw, Brant's men. So they weren't finished after all. He crouched behind a mesquite bush, counting rifles. 2 leaning against a crate, 1 across a saddle. Enough to make trouble. The men spoke low, their voices muffled by the drizzle. He rode north. Said the Apache took him in. Heard the old man sent him to the mountain. Probably dead by now. Doesn't matter. Boss wants proof. Proof. His gut twisted. They were hunting him. He backed away slowly, careful not to slip. The boy waited where he'd left him, eyes wide. "Bad men?" "Worse," he said. "We're moving." They turned east, cutting across the plain toward a stand of cottonwoods. The river beside them growled louder, rising fast from the runoff. Halfway across, a shout broke through the rain. "Rider, there!" Bullets whined past. The cowboy shoved the boy flat behind a log and returned fire. 2 quick shots. 1 hit, 1 missed. The men scrambled for cover. "Stay down," he barked. The boy nodded, trembling but silent. The cowboy fired again, driving the attackers back toward their horses. He used the storm for cover, every flash of lightning giving him a heartbeat's vision. When the firing stopped, he reloaded, listening. Only the river answered. He crawled back to the boy. "You hurt." The boy shook his head. "You saved me." He looked away. "Don't thank me. Not yet." They waited another minute, then stood. The rain was lighter now, but the river had doubled in width, roaring as it swallowed the lowlands. "We can't cross here," the cowboy said. "We'll have to follow it till morning." The boy looked up at him, water dripping from his hair. "You think the land will still remember her?" The cowboy met his gaze. "As long as someone does." They started walking again, 2 figures against the endless wet horizon, one small, one scarred. Behind them, unseen in the mist, one of Brant's men stirred among the rocks, bleeding but alive. He watched them go, hatred glinting faint through the rain, and as the cowboy and the boy disappeared into the grey distance, another hunt began. The rain had turned cold by nightfall, a fine silver curtain whispering over the plains. The cowboy found shelter under a jagged rock shelf near the river, where a few dead branches had been caught in a crevice. He pulled them free, struck flint, and soon a small fire trembled to life, weak, orange, barely holding against the damp air. The boy huddled close, his blanket soaked, teeth chattering. The cowboy poured what was left of the coffee into a tin cup, holding it over the flame. "Drink slow," he said. "Too fast and it'll bite your gut." The boy took it carefully, steam curling around his fingers. "Ain't you cold?" "Always am," the cowboy said, half a smile ghosting across his face. "Doesn't stop." Lightning flashed across the valley, lighting the river in sharp white streaks. The water had risen higher since dusk, crawling closer to their camp. Somewhere out there a coyote cried, a lonely sound swallowed quick by thunder. The boy glanced up nervously. "They'll come again, won't they?" "Maybe," he said. Men like that don't stop till they find what they're looking for. Question is what they think they're looking for. The boy frowned. You mean the amulet? The cowboy nodded. They don't know it's gone home. They only see the shine, not the spirit behind it. He stared into the flames, face lined in shadow. The firelight caught his eyes, gray, tired, but alert. The boy studied him for a long moment. You were one of them once. The cowboy's jaw tightened. That was... Why'd you stop? Didn't stop. Just ran out of reasons to keep going. The boy tilted his head. She changed that. The cowboy looked into the fire again, voice lower now. She didn't change it. She just reminded me I had something left worth losing. The wind shifted. The fire flickered. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the shelf, a rock slid down the slope with a faint scrape. The boy froze. That wasn't the wind. The cowboy's hand moved to his revolver. Stay behind me. He stood, scanning the shadows. The rain had stopped, leaving only the hiss of the river and the heartbeat sound of dripping stone. Another scrape. Closer. Then silence. He stepped forward, eyes narrowing. The edge of the firelight showed nothing but wet rock and grass. Still, he knew better. The desert never made noise without reason. Who's there? He called, voice calm but sharp. No answer, just the whisper of something moving low and fast. He turned just in time to see the glint of metal. A knife flashed through the dark. He caught the attacker's wrist, twisting hard, the blade clattering to the ground. A figure lunged, mud-streaked, bleeding, one of Brant's men. The same one he thought he'd left for dead. They crashed into the dirt, struggling. The cowboy drove his elbow into the man's ribs, rolled and grabbed the fallen knife. The outlaw snarled, punching him across the jaw. You don't die easy, the man spat. Never learned how, the cowboy grunted, slamming his forearm into the man's throat. The boy cried out, but stayed where he was, clutching the empty tin cup. The outlaw shoved the cowboy back, snatching his pistol from the ground. The hammer clicked. Guess she died for nothing after all. The cowboy froze, eyes on the barrel. The boy shouted, No! And threw the cup. It hit the outlaw square in the face, just enough. The gun went off, shot going wide. The cowboy lunged forward, tackling him again. The struggle was brief and brutal. 2 grunts, a flash of steel, and then silence. When it was over, the cowboy knelt in the mud, breathing hard. The outlaw lay still, rain running over his open eyes. The boy stared, pale. You killed him. The cowboy wiped the blood from his hands. Or he killed himself coming here. He picked up the pistol, spun the cylinder, and slid it back into his holster. No more running tonight. The boy looked down. He said she died for nothing. Is that true? The cowboy's voice softened. No, son. She died for everything that's still breathing. He crouched by the fire again, feeding it new twigs. The boy sat beside him, silent. After a while, the cowboy spoke again, quieter. There's a town east of here. They call it Hollow Bend. River splits there. When the sun comes up, we ride. Why? The boy asked. Because men like Brant don't stop at graves, he said. They dig 'em back up. The boy hugged his knees, staring into the fire. And if they find us... The cowboy glanced toward the dark horizon. Then the land'll have to decide who it remembers this time. The rain started again, gentle now, a whisper instead of a warning. The fire popped once, sparks drifting upward like fading stars. The cowboy leaned back against the stone, eyes half shut, the boys breathing steady beside him. And though the night held its dangers close, for a fleeting moment, the storm sounded almost like a lullaby. Dawn rose pale and cold over the soaked plains. The world seemed scrubbed clean, mud glinting with light, air heavy with the smell of wet cedar. The cowboy saddled the horse in silence, the boy beside him rolling up the blanket with clumsy fingers. You ever been to a town before? The cowboy asked. The boy shook his head. Not one with fences. Then you'll keep quiet and let me talk. They rode east, following the river until the land flattened into pasture. The trail turned into a wagon road, rutted deep from rain and travel. A few miles on, a faded sign leaned sideways in the mud. Hollow Bend. Pop. 312. Keep your iron holstered. The boy squinted. "They don't like guns? They like peace," the cowboy said. "Don't mean they have it." As they entered town, the morning stillness broke under the hammering of hooves and voices. Folks were already about, merchants opening shutters, women sweeping porches, a preacher calling across the street to a drunk who hadn't made it home. The smell of coffee drifted from the inn near the end of the street. The boy looked around, wide-eyed. "Looks alive," the cowboy grunted. "Don't let it fool you. Life makes noise right before it dies." He led the horse toward the stable. The stable hand, an older man missing 2 fingers, looked them over without greeting. His eyes lingered on the cowboy's torn sleeve, the dried blood along the cuff. "Storm catch you up north?" he asked. "Caught and near drowned," the cowboy said, flipping a coin. The man caught it, nodded. "Plenty of rooms at the inn." "Sheriff's been asking after drifters, though." The cowboy's gaze sharpened. "That's so. Brant men came through 2 days back, left a poster." He jerked his chin toward the wall. The cowboy turned. His own face stared back, drawn rough but unmistakable. "Wanted. $500 dead or alive." Beneath it, scrawled in ink, "For the death of Deputy Cross and theft of sacred property." He tore it down, folded it. "Cross," he muttered. The stable hand shrugged. "Deputy out a red fork. Worked for the Brant outfit on the side. Word is, you shot him last spring." The boy's voice was barely a whisper. "You did?" The cowboy didn't answer. He slid the poster into his coat pocket and walked out. They reached the inn just as a stagecoach pulled up out front, wheels caked in mud. A man stepped down, coat too fine for the dust, eyes too sharp for comfort. He moved with the calm of someone used to giving orders. The innkeeper hurried out to greet him. "Morning, Marshal." The cowboy stopped cold. The boy tugged his sleeve. "What's wrong?" "Wrong man," he said. "At the wrong time." The marshal turned, scanning the street. His gaze passed over them once, then came back. Recognition flickered, faint but certain. "Morning, stranger," the marshal called. The cowboy tipped his hat. "Just passing through." "Funny," the marshal said, stepping closer. "You look like a man who's been passing through a lot of trouble lately." The cowboy's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Depends who's telling the story." The marshal's hand rested casually on the butt of his revolver. "Name?" "Doesn't matter." "Could matter a whole lot," the marshal said, "especially to the folks looking for you." The boy shifted behind him. The cowboy stepped slightly sideways, keeping himself between the marshal and the child. "If you know who's looking," he said evenly, "then you know they ain't law." The marshal's grin was thin. "Law's just whoever's still standing at sundown." They stared at each other for a long moment. Then the marshal gestured toward the inn. "You can come in, dry off and explain yourself. Or you can keep walking and see how far you get before the Brant boys find you." The boy's voice was small. "Maybe we should go." The cowboy's gaze didn't leave the marshal. "Maybe we should," but instead of walking away, he stepped forward. "You ever seen a land breathe again after a storm?" The marshal frowned. "Can't say I have." "Then you don't know what kind of man I am." He turned and walked into the inn. The boy followed, clutching his sleeve. Inside, the warmth was immediate, fire crackling, smell of bread thick in the air. The few patrons turned to look, murmuring. The marshal came in after them, boots loud on the floorboards. The innkeeper poured coffee without being asked, sliding 2 cups across the counter. The cowboy nodded his thanks but didn't drink. His eyes stayed on the window, watching the street. Outside, 2 riders had appeared, mud-slick, rifles on their shoulders. Brant men. The marshal saw them too. "Looks like you brought company." The cowboy rose slowly. "No," he said, voice quiet. "They followed the storm." The marshal's hand went to his gun. "So what happens now?" The cowboy's answer came soft but sure. "Now the rain starts again." Lightning flashed outside. A gun hammer clicked. The room held its breath, and the new storm began. The first bullet shattered the window. Glass rained over the counter. A woman screamed, and the lamps flickered as gunpowder smoke rolled in with the wind. The cowboy shoved the boy flat under the table and spun toward the door, gun already drawn. The marshal fired first, clean, quick, 2 shots through the opening. 1 man fell outside. The second dove behind a water trough, returning fire. Wood splintered, Bottles exploded behind the bar. The cowboy moved with practiced calm, crouching low, aiming by instinct. "You said you wanted my story," he called to the marshal. "Here it is." "Remind me to ask for the short version next time," the marshal shouted back, reloading. Another shot cracked through the doorway. A mirror burst behind them. The boy covered his ears, eyes wide with terror. "Stay down," the cowboy barked. He leaned around the edge of the bar and fired twice, one into the trough, one just above it. The outlaw cursed, ducking. The marshal grinned grimly. "You're not bad for a wanted man," the cowboy smirked. "You're not bad for law that's still breathing." The noise outside shifted. Hooves, more shouting. Reinforcements. The Brandt gang wasn't leaving until one of them was dead. The cowboy's mind worked fast. The back door opened into the alley. The stables lay just beyond, but the boy couldn't outrun a rifle. He grabbed the marshal's arm. "We'll draw 'em left. You take the boy, get him to the stables." The marshal's eyes narrowed. "You trust me that much?" "I don't," the cowboy said. "But I trust the kid more." Before the marshal could argue, the cowboy stood, firing toward the windows. The sharp rhythm of gunfire echoed through the inn. The marshal grabbed the boy, pulling him toward the kitchen door. "Go!" the cowboy yelled. The boy looked back once, lips trembling. "You'll follow?" He nodded. "Always." They disappeared into the kitchen just as another round tore through the front wall. The cowboy ducked behind a pillar, swapping cylinders with steady hands. His breath came fast but measured. Outside, the wind carried the metallic smell of rain and blood. He stepped through the shattered door and into the street. 3 riders waited, rifles ready. The bodies of their comrades lay half-buried in mud. The leader, a scarred man in a duster coat, smiled when he saw him. "Brandt wants you alive, preacher. He says you've got something that ain't yours." The cowboy's voice was calm. "Tell him he's late. The land already took it back." The man sneered. "Then you'll bring him something else." He raised his rifle. The cowboy dove sideways as bullets tore up the dirt where he'd been standing. He hit the ground hard, rolled, fired twice. One man toppled. The other cursed and fell to his knees. The leader advanced through the smoke. "You ain't walking away from this." The cowboy rose slowly, gun hanging loose at his side. "Ain't planning to walk, just planning to finish." They circled each other in the rain, boots sinking into mud. The leader spat. "You think that girl saved you. Truth is, she marked you. Every ghost you sent to the dirt wants you back down there." The cowboy's voice went quiet. "Maybe so, but she gave me a reason to keep standing till the wind stops." Lightning split the sky. Both fired. The Brandt man's hat flew off. The cowboy's shoulder jerked. He dropped to one knee, clutching his side. The outlaw laughed, walking closer, rifle raised again. Then a crack split the air, a clean shot from behind. The outlaw froze, shock in his eyes, and crumpled. Smoke drifted from the marshal's revolver. He stood in the alley, coat soaked, face pale but steady. "Told you laws, whoever's still standing at sundown." The cowboy grinned through his pain. "Guess that makes 2 of us." The marshal helped him up. "You're bleeding bad." "Been worse." "Town will be crawling with Brandt men by nightfall," the marshal said. "We can't stay." The boy ran from the stable, rain plastering his hair. "The horses are ready." The cowboy staggered toward him, gripping his arm. "You listen close. You ride east. Follow the river till you hit the pass. Don't stop for smoke. Don't answer for voices." "What about you?" the boy asked. He looked down at him, eyes soft. "I'll find you when the sky clears." The marshal frowned. "You're not coming?" The cowboy shook his head. "Brandt ain't done yet. He's too close to the river. Someone's got to make sure he never crosses it." The marshal hesitated, then held out his hand. "If you live through it, Hollow Bend owes you a drink." The cowboy took it. "If I live through it, I'll buy the round." They mounted their horses as thunder rolled overhead. The boy looked back one last time, seeing the smoke rising from the inn, the bodies in the street, the man who'd carried ghosts longer than any soul should. The cowboy watched them vanish down the road, then turned his horse north, toward the ridge, toward the storm still boiling above the mountains. He whispered under his breath, "You said the land remembers. Let it remember this." The wind answered with a low, mournful howl. and the lone rider disappeared into the rain. Night fell hard over the plains, thick clouds swallowing the moon, thunder rumbling somewhere distant. The cowboy rode slow, every hoofbeat muffled by mud and wind. The rain had thinned, but the air carried the weight of something heavier than weather. He followed the river north, where the land dipped low and the water cut a path through black stone. His shoulder ached with every movement, but he didn't stop. He knew Brant's men, how they moved, where they'd hide. He'd been one of them once. By the time he saw the first campfire flicker through the trees, the world was quiet again, too quiet. He dismounted, tying his horse among the reeds, and crept forward. The camp sat near the river bend, 4 tents, a wagon, and half a dozen horses tethered close. He crouched behind a fallen log. Voices carried faintly through the night. "The boss says dawn," one man muttered. "So we hit the village, burn the lodges, take what's owed." "Owed?" Another laughed. "We already took it. All this for a trinket." "Not a trinket," the first said. "Brant says it's proof, says it keeps the tribes in line. You break their spirit, they stop fighting." The cowboy's jaw tightened. They wanted to erase what little peace the woman had died to restore. He waited, breath steady. There were too many to take head on. But a fire, a horse stampede. Chaos worked better than bullets. He pulled a strip of cloth from his pocket, wrapped it around his bleeding arm, then reached for his saddlebag. A small flask of whiskey, enough to burn, enough to light. He poured it over a bundle of dried grass, struck flint, and tossed it toward the edge of the camp. The flames caught quick, crackling in the damp air. Within seconds, the horses screamed and reared. Men shouted, stumbling from their tents. The cowboy moved like shadow, silent, efficient. One man went down with a blow to the neck, another tripped in the mud, gun flying. The cowboy grabbed the fallen rifle, aimed, and fired at the wagon wheel. The shot rang through the night. The wagon lurched, tilted, and crashed into the fire, scattering embers like angry stars. A familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Still causing trouble, preacher?" He froze. Brant stepped from the largest tent, coat half-buttoned, revolver drawn. His hair had gone white at the edges, but his eyes hadn't changed, cold, precise, full of mockery. The cowboy straightened slowly, mud dripping from his hat brim. "You should have stayed buried with your lies," Brant chuckled, "and missed this reunion. You were always the best sermon I ever heard. Talk about redemption while pulling the trigger." The cowboy's expression didn't move. "You turned me into that?" "No," Brant said. "I just showed you what you already were." They circled the fire, heat flickering between them. Around them, the gang scrambled to regroup, shouting orders, gathering rifles. "Stand down!" Brant barked. "He's mine." The men froze, uncertain but obedient. "You came all this way to die for an Apache girl," Brant said, tilting his head. "What did she do? Pray the sin out of you." The cowboy's voice was low, even. "She remembered my name when I couldn't," Brant laughed. "She was just another fool who thought ghosts could be saved." He raised his gun. "Now she'll have company." The cowboy fired first. The flash lit the riverbank. Brant staggered, clutching his side but didn't fall. His shot came wild, grazing the cowboy's ribs. They both stumbled, circling again. The fire roared between them, sparks spiraling into the black sky. "You think killing me changes what you did," Brant rasped. "You think the land forgives." The cowboy's breath came heavy. "Ain't asking it to, just making sure it forgets you first." They fired again. 2 more flashes. Brant fell to one knee, hand pressed to his chest. He tried to raise the gun once more, but his strength was gone. The cowboy stepped closer, rain hissing on the coals. "You used faith like a whip," he said quietly. "How you called men brothers just to sell their souls." Brant's lips twisted in a faint smile. "And you were my best convert." His eyes went glassy, the smile fading as his head dropped forward. The cowboy stood there, chest rising and falling, revolver still smoking. He looked down at the man who'd shaped his worst years, and for a long time said nothing. Then he holstered his gun, turned, and kicked dirt over the dying fire. Sparks hissed and vanished. The rest of the men had scattered into the darkness. He didn't chase them. The storm would do the work. He walked to the river's edge, the water swollen and fierce from the rains. He pulled the blood-stained poster from his coat and let it drop into the current. The paper swirled once, twice, then disappeared into the black water. He whispered, "That's all the proof you'll ever get." The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of smoke from the distant village. Alive, untouched for now. He looked toward the east, where dawn was a dim red bruise behind the clouds. "Almost home," he said softly. Behind him, thunder rolled again. One long, low note that sounded less like warning and more like acknowledgement. He mounted his horse, blood seeping through his shirt, and rode toward the light. The river followed beside him, fast and alive, whispering her name with every turn. The dawn came slow, a bruised light creeping across the wet plains. Mist hung low over the river, veiling everything in pale grey. The cowboy's horse moved at a steady limp, and the man atop it looked barely upright, hat low, jaw tight, blood drying black across his side. He hadn't slept, hadn't spoken, hadn't thought beyond one truth. The storm had ended, but the reckoning hadn't. By mid-morning, he reached the ridge overlooking the valley of the Apache lodges. Smoke from their fires rose straight and calm, untouched by wind. The land below seemed at peace, unaware that the ghosts it had birthed still walked. The horse stumbled, nearly throwing him. He caught the reins, breathing through the pain. "Easy, girl. We ain't ghosts yet." When he reached the edge of the settlement, a few villagers saw him coming and hurried inside. He couldn't blame them. He looked more outlaw than man. Then a child's voice rang out. "He's back." The boy came running through the mud, eyes wide, barefoot, face bright with something between hope and disbelief. "You came back," the boy said breathlessly. The cowboy dismounted with effort, boots sinking deep. "Told you I would when the sky cleared." The boy stared at his wounds. "You're hurt." He shrugged. "Been worse." The elder appeared next, walking slow, his carved staff sinking into the wet ground. His eyes took in everything. The blood, the mud, the exhaustion. "You found the storm again," he said quietly. "I found the men who made it," the cowboy replied. The elder's expression didn't change, but something softened in his gaze. "And the man who led them?" "Gone," the cowboy said simply. The elder nodded once. "Then his shadow will trouble no more rivers." The cowboy swayed slightly. The boy caught his arm. "He needs rest." The elder gestured toward one of the lodges. "Bring him." Inside, the air was warm with cedar smoke. A woman stirred herbs into a bowl, glancing up as they entered. The boy helped him to a mat near the fire. The cowboy sank down, groaning quietly. "Don't fuss. I just need a minute." The elder knelt beside him, pressing a hand to his chest, feeling the slow, uneven rhythm beneath. "Your heart is strong," he said, "but it doesn't know where to rest." The cowboy chuckled weakly. "Never found a place that wanted it." The elder's voice was calm. "The land doesn't choose, it waits. It remembers every hand that plants, every one that destroys. You've done both. Now you must let it decide which to keep." The woman pressed a poultice against his wound. He hissed through his teeth. "Feels like fire." "That's how it heals," she said. He looked to the boy, who watched him silently. "You shouldn't have followed me," he murmured. The boy frowned. "You told me to listen to the land." "I did. It told me you'd come back hurt," the boy said simply. "So I waited." The cowboy's throat tightened. He turned his face away from the boy's eyes and stared into the fire. The flames danced, twisting into shapes he almost recognized, the woman's face, her hands placing the amulet on the stone, the river roaring behind her like breath. He whispered, "She's still out there, isn't she?" The elder's answer came soft, certain, "In every drop that fell since that night." The cowboy's eyes closed for a moment. "She told me once the sky never forgets." "I thought she meant the storms." The elder smiled faintly. "She meant mercy." For a long while, none of them spoke. Only the fire filled the silence. Outside, the village had begun to stir again. Voices, laughter, the sound of children playing near the riverbank. He listened to it all like a man waking from a dream he'd lived too long. Finally, the elder stood. "You should rest." The cowboy nodded, though his eyes stayed on the light through the lodge flap. "Not sure I know how anymore." The boy grinned faintly. "I can teach you." He laughed, an honest sound this time, quiet but real. "That's so?" The boy nodded. "You close your eyes and listen to the rain. That's what she did." He leaned back against the mat, a slow smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Guess that's a lesson I can try." As his eyes drifted shut, the elder's voice echoed one last time. "The land keeps what it forgives." He slept. Outside, the wind carried the smell of new grass and damp soil. The river murmured softly through the valley, and for the first time since the storm began, the world didn't sound like punishment. It sounded like beginning. Days passed like water through sand, quiet, steady, carrying the weight of everything that came before. The cowboy stayed in the village, his wound healing slow but sure. The scar would never fade, but the ache was softer now, less like punishment and more like reminder. He worked where hands were needed. He helped mend fences, haul wood, patch roofs ripped by the storm. No one told him what to do. They simply handed him tools and he understood. The people spoke little, but they watched. Slowly, their stares turned from suspicion to nods of silent acknowledgement. At night, he sat by the fire with the boy, teaching him how to carve small figures from driftwood. The boy was quick, too quick. "You'll be better than me in a week," the cowboy said. The boy grinned. "You mean in 3 days?" The cowboy chuckled. "That's so." The boy nodded, tongue poking from the corner of his mouth as he shaped the wood. "When you leave, I'll finish this one." The cowboy froze. "Who said I was leaving?" The boy shrugged. "Men like you always do." He didn't answer, because deep down he knew the boy was right. The next morning the elder found him near the river, sleeves rolled, helping repair the fishing nets. The old man studied him for a while before speaking. "The land has grown quiet again," he said. "Quiet's good," the cowboy replied. "Sometimes," the elder said, "but silence can hide what's still unsettled." The cowboy looked up. "You mean me?" The elder didn't deny it. "You've done much here, but the debt of a spirit isn't repaid with labor." He stood, brushing mud from his hands. "Then what is it repaid with?" "Truth," the elder said simply. "You returned what was stolen, but you haven't faced what you took." The cowboy frowned. "Brant's gone. His men scattered. Ain't that enough?" The elder's gaze held firm. "He wasn't the only one who carried the sin. You were his hand once. You buried your own name under his shadow. Until you dig it up, the land won't know which man it shelters." The words hit harder than he expected. He looked away, jaw tight. "And if I do, what then?" The elder's tone softened. "Then the land decides if you stay among the living." Later that evening, he stood at the riverbank, watching the sun dip behind the ridge. The water shimmered gold and red. The boy came up beside him, holding 2 wooden figures, one shaped like a horse, the other like a hawk. "I made these," the boy said proudly. "The horse is you, the hawk is her." He took them gently, turning them in his hands. "You got her right. She always looked like she was just about to fly." The boy studied him. "You miss her?" "Every time the wind stops blowing," he said quietly. They stood there a while, listening to the river. Then a sound cut through the peace, a distant crack, sharp and unmistakable. A rifle. The boy's head snapped up. "What was that?" The cowboy's face hardened. "Trouble that don't learn when to quit." He grabbed his gun belt from the ground. The elder appeared at the lodge entrance, eyes grave. "Riders from the west," he said. 5, maybe 6. Brant's mark on their coats." The cowboy's gut twisted. "He's dead. I saw him fall." "Ghosts don't always stay buried," the elder said. The cowboy looked toward the horizon. Dust rose faintly where the last light hit the plains. "Then the land's about to choose." He turned to the boy. "Stay here, guard the people, you hear me?" The boy shook his head. "I can help. You help by living." The boy's eyes filled, but he didn't argue. He took the carved hawk from the cowboy's hand and pressed it into his palm. "For luck," he whispered. The cowboy nodded once. "For memory." He rode out before full dark, the sound of hooves muffled by damp earth. The air was heavy, the sky bruised purple and gray. Somewhere behind him, the village torches flickered, small, defiant lights against the gathering dark. As he reached the open plain, he saw them, 5 riders, slow and deliberate, their shapes black against the horizon. The one in front carried a lantern swinging low. The cowboy reined in, resting his hand on his revolver. "You boys picked the wrong ghost to chase," he muttered. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain again. One of the riders called out, "Brant's name ain't done yet." He didn't answer. He just dismounted, boots sinking into the wet grass. The river hissed softly behind him, waiting. The riders fanned out, forming a half circle. The leader raised his gun. The cowboy took one slow breath. "Then let's see which one of us the land remembers." Lightning flashed across the sky, thunder rolling over the plain. The storm was coming back, and as the first drops began to fall, he drew. The first drop hit his cheek like a warning, then another. Then the sky tore open. Rain swept over the plain in a silver wall, thunder rolling from ridge to ridge. The 5 riders closed in, their outlines flickering like shadows in lightning's glare. The cowboy stood still in the center of it all, hat brim dripping, hand resting easy on his holster. The leader called through the storm, voice raw with hate. "You think killin' Brant ends what he built? He ain't dead. He's in every man you left breathin'." The cowboy's reply came steady, cutting through wind and rain. "Then I'll bury what's left." The man snarled. "You alone?" The cowboy looked past them toward the black horizon. "Never alone. The land's listenin'." They laughed, hard, sharp, fearless. Then the leader raised his arm. "Fire!" The plain erupted in muzzle flashes. Thunder and gunfire tangled until you couldn't tell one from the other. The cowboy dropped to one knee, returning shots fast and precise. Each flash lit the storm's veins above them, lightning answering gunfire in kind. 2 riders went down quick, horses rearing, bolting into the dark. The third caught one in the chest, spinning backward. The cowboy rolled behind a rock outcrop, breath ragged, shoulder burning where a bullet grazed. The leader dismounted, advancing slow. "You don't get to wash this clean, preacher. You made this blood run." The cowboy pressed his palm to the wound, felt warm life leaking through his fingers. He forced himself upright. "Then I'll let it feed the ground she saved." Another shot cracked. The bullet missed by an inch, splintering stone. The storm howled louder, pushing both men closer together, blurring the line between heaven's fury and human vengeance. The cowboy stepped forward. "You came for ghosts. You'll find plenty." The leader's eyes gleamed. "Then I'll start with yours." They fired at the same moment. Lightning hit the ground between them, an explosion of white and thunder that split the night wide open. For a heartbeat, everything froze. Rain hanging in air, guns smoking mid-recoil, the river boiling with light. Then sound returned in a roar. The leader fell hard, thrown backward by the force. The cowboy staggered, dropped his gun, and fell to one knee, ears ringing, breath gone. When the flash faded, only 2 figures moved, the cowboy and the storm itself. He crawled toward the fallen man. Brant's mark was burned into his coat, seared black by lightning. His eyes stared at nothing. The cowboy reached for his gun, flipped it open. The bullets had melted in the heat. He laughed once, a short, broken sound. Guess the sky made its choice. He stood slowly, legs trembling. The storm began to ease, thunder rolling farther off. In the distance, faint shapes emerged. Villagers running across the plain, torches glowing like fireflies in the rain. At the front was the boy. "Don't!" the cowboy shouted. "Stay back!" But the boy kept coming, splashing through mud, calling his name. The name no one had spoken in years. The cowboy turned, shocked. The sound of it hit harder than any bullet. For a moment, he saw her face, the Apache woman, standing behind the boy in the shimmer of lightning, eyes calm, lips whispering something he couldn't hear. The wind shifted. The storm's breath turned warm. The rain slowed to a mist. He looked at the boy, voice breaking. How'd you know that name?" The boy reached him, chest heaving. "She told me in a dream, said it was the one you buried." The cowboy knelt, hand trembling on the boy's shoulder. "Then she's still talking." The boy nodded, tears mixing with rain. "She said the land remembers kindness, even if men forget." The cowboy exhaled, the weight of years falling from him like mud from his boots. He turned toward the horizon, dawn burning faint and red behind thinning clouds. He whispered to the wind, "You can rest now. It's done." The storm gave one last rumble, softer than thunder, more like a sigh. The rain stopped. The earth steamed. The boy looked up at him. "Are you going home now?" The cowboy smiled, faint and tired. "I think I already am." Behind them, the villagers gathered, silent witnesses to the quiet aftermath. The elder stepped forward, eyes glinting in dawn's light. "The land decided," he said. The cowboy nodded once. "And I ain't arguing with it." He holstered his empty gun, turned to the boy, and handed him the carved hawk. "Keep her close. She'll watch the sky for you." The boy held it tight. "And you," he smiled, "I'll ride till the wind stops remembering my name." He stepped into the light. The river beside him ran strong and clear, whispering the same name again and again until it was part of the morning. And as the sun broke over the ridge, washing the valley gold, the cowboy disappeared into its glow. One man, one ghost, and a land finally at peace. By sunrise, the storm had vanished as if it had never been. The sky hung wide and blue, the air thick with the scent of wet sage and new beginnings. The earth shimmered, soaked but breathing again. The villagers worked in silence that morning, not the fearful kind, but the reverent kind. They moved along the riverbank, checking nets, gathering fallen branches, mending what the storm had loosened. The ground was soft beneath their feet, warm where sunlight touched it. The boy stood on the ridge above them, the carved hawk clutched in his hand. Its wooden wings gleamed faintly in the light. Beside him, the elder watched the land with quiet eyes. "He's gone, isn't he?" the boy asked. The elder nodded slowly. "Men like him don't stay. They become part of what they save." The boy squinted toward the horizon. A single rider's trail wound east through the grass, already fading. "Will we see him again?" The elder smiled faintly. "When the wind changes, down below the river glinted like polished steel, swollen but gentle now. The same river that had once carried ashes and blood now carried life again. Children waded at its edge, laughing as minnows darted through their toes. Women spread blankets to dry in the sun. The valley hummed with quiet joy. The boy knelt near the water, setting the carved hawk on a stone. "She can watch from here," he said softly. The elder placed a hand on his shoulder. "The sky will listen, it always does." He looked down at the boy, at the same eyes that had once held fear now shining with certainty. "Do you understand what he did?" The boy nodded. "He gave back what he took. Then he gave himself." "Good," the elder said, "because that is what the land remembers, not the killing, not the storms, only the giving." A breeze rose then, gentle but insistent, rippling the tall grass. The hawk carving wobbled, almost lifting as if it wanted to fly. The boy grinned. "See that, she's still here." The elder smiled. "So is he." The wind carried faint sounds from the far hills, the slow rhythm of a single horse's gait, steady, patient, fading toward the horizon. The elder tilted his head, listening. He murmured a prayer in the old tongue, a few words that meant, "May the land keep his name without chains." As the sound of hooves disappeared, the sky deepened to gold. The valley's shadows softened. A hawk circled high above, riding the warm air currents. The boy looked up, eyes wide. "There," he whispered. The elder nodded. "Every story leaves something behind." He turned to the others working along the riverbank. "Let the fires rest. The storm has done its work. Now we build again." They obeyed, moving with quiet purpose. New fences went up. Seed baskets were opened, and laughter began to return like music the valley had forgotten. The boy lingered by the river, dipping his hands into the current. He whispered a name, not the cowboy's, but hers. The water shimmered and carried it away. Then he looked up toward the east. The rising sun painted the grass in copper and honey. He could almost see the rider's silhouette there, bent slightly, hat low, the kind of figure that never truly vanished. "Ride easy," he murmured. And in that moment, the boy understood something no one had to teach him. Some debts aren't paid in silver or blood. They're paid in remembering, by keeping the silence alive, by planting where others have burned. He stood, letting the wind dry his hands, the carved hawk safe against his chest. Behind him, the elder began to hum an old song, a tune carried down generations, meant to bless the land after a storm. The melody rose and fell with the rhythm of the river. It reached the hills, the plains, the horizon, where a single rider's shadow still moved with the sun. And for the first time since the rains began, the world felt whole. If this story stirred something in you, if you felt the storm, the redemption, and the silence that followed, then stay with us for the next journey. Every week, we bring another tale born from dust, courage, and the fight to make peace with the past. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Leave a comment with the moment that struck you deepest. Was it the rain, the return, or the reckoning? And if the cowboy's path reminded you of someone you've known, share it. Stories like this live longer when they're told again. The land remembers those who listen. Ride with us. The next dawn's already on the horizon.